Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Novelists Unwind. I'm Johnnie Alexander, and I'm joined today by Rachelle Dekker. Very glad to have Rachelle with us, and we're going to be talking about her latest book, which she wrote with her father, Ted Dekker, called The Girl Behind the Red Rope. And we're also going to be talking about Rachelle's writing journey and whatever else comes up. So, Rachelle, welcome. We're so glad to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're really excited. So, of course, your father is known worldwide, big name. How was it like growing up with that kind of creative energy in the household? And then did you always know that you wanted to also be an author? How much influence did he have on you in that?
A ton of influence. Obviously, our parents are some of our greatest teachers.
Absolutely.
So I discovered a love for story really young. I wrote my first kind of novella. It was like 60 pages, so not really a novel, when I was like 12. So I've been writing for basically all of my life. I never really had any other dreams that were reasonable. I think there was surely some point when I wanted to be a Britney Spears backup dancer, but of course. But yeah, I kind of knew that story was my avenue early on, mostly just because I loved to read so much. I kind of got lost in that. I was the kid who wanted to go to the library over the mall and, I'd get in trouble for spending hours in my room reading instead of interacting with my family. And, that was kind of always the place I felt most at home and where I discovered the most about myself, about the world. So I knew writing was going to be something I was very interested in. And then, having Ted Dekker around the house, of course, I didn't realize he was Ted Dekker until I was a little bit older, probably high school, before it started to be like, oh, this is an unusual situation that I find myself in. Not all kids are sitting at the dinner table with their father and he's talking about the best way to hide a body in a body. I'm not sure that that's normal, or about, transporting from one world to the other, falling asleep in one and waking up in another. And, talking just about all the different like plots and different like devices and twists and, how to picture or really capture darkness in a way that made it authentic and made the light very bright and overwhelming as well. And all of those conversations that happened when I was young. I don't think I realized I was growing up with somebody who was so in tune with spirit and I guess such an adventurer, such a seeker, until I was a little bit older and started to see kind of some of the same qualities in myself. And I always knew that if I took this journey, one day a collaboration would have to happen. I wasn't sure when or if I wanted to, but I was pretty sure it was along the path at some point. So.
Oh, that's so interesting. And part of what you were saying reminded me of an interview that I heard a long time ago. And I don't remember his last name, so I'm sorry about that. But Stephen King's son, I think his first name is Joe, but he writes under a different surname.
Yeah.
And he was saying the same kind of thing, that he didn't realize. He thought if he just wanted to write a book, he could just write a book, and it was very simple process because that's what his dad did,
Yeah.
And then just learning, that he had to make his own way, and excuse me, and just some of the things you said. So that is really fascinating.
Yeah, my dad was actually very discouraging early on, and he'll be the first to admit that, and he's talked about that before. But when I came to him, I was probably, I guess, when he started to take me seriously, I was probably like 17 or 18, getting ready to go off to college. I just graduated high school, and I didn't really want to go to college because I wanted to be a writer, and what's the point of college? Which I may still take that stance. But he was like, no, writing isn't realistic. Writing is about being a published author is about as risky as being a backup dancer for Britney Spears. So you don't really want to do that. You just think you do, and you have no idea what you're really taking on, and the rejection and the disappointment and the heartache, become anything else. We have this joke, that my dad would say, why not just be a dentist? Like, why can't you just want to be a dentist? That would be easier. And he's not wrong. He was not wrong, but I'm incredibly stubborn. That may be the Ted Dekker in me. And it was definitely something I think he needed to see me say, no, I'm going to do this anyways. And I actually signed my first contract, publishing contract, before he had ever read the novel that I sold.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, because he didn't want to. He didn't want to be influential in that way. I mean, obviously, a lot of my lessons about how to write and story developing, I learned from reading his work and from conversations just around the house. But I think it was really important for him, and it was really important for me. Looking back now, I realized that to kind of forge my own path. And people will make assumptions about how I got published, and that's okay because, they're not all untrue, but he kind of was like, are you sure you want to do this? Are you really, really sure? And, I kind of got to a point where, yeah, I'm really sure. Sold a book without, him having even read it or giving commentary on it. And he was like, okay, well, maybe there is something here. And ever since then, he's been incredibly supportive.
Oh, that's great.
The first person I go to with any kind of question, from story to business to why did you let me do this? He's like, I tried.
Well, and it's so cool too, because of course, he has this worldwide reputation, has sold millions of books, the whole bit. But to think that he also warns you against the rejection and people don't always realize that you get to that point, but that doesn't mean that you didn't have rejection and hardships and struggles along the way. It's nobody I have talked to has been an overnight success,
No.
No.
Not even those of us with famous dads. I mean, that's just not, you still have to, at least in this industry, I won't speak for all art industries, but in this one, you still have to prove yourself. You still have to be able to do something well. Especially in Christian publishing, I think there's a little bit more authenticity sometimes because of, the messages that we are portraying and, the places that we're coming from. They're not just handing over publishing contracts.
No.
Just because of the last name, that may be a huge factor, but you really, it's not just, I kind of was under the illusion myself, like Stephen King's son. I'll just write a book. Well, I wrote 5 novels, five novels, 4 that were rejected before I could sell one.
Wow. And that's very typical. I hear that kind of story as I interview with authors all the time. Yeah.
So, and then I think you get to a place where, and I know that for my dad, it wasn't just about, oh, well, once you get published, you've made it. It's like, no. Then you have to sell books. Then you have to outdo yourself. Then every book has to be better than the one before. And the higher you rise, the farther the fall. Exactly. So for him, it was like, what if you do this? What if you become super successful? And then 25 novels in, you find yourself miserable still. Because that happens a lot as well. So I think there was just so much that he was afraid for me, as any father would be. I was like, well, too bad. I'm gonna do this anyways. So.
Well, I know I read on somewhere, like in the press materials or your website, that you said you're a little bit of a rebel. So it's like
a little bit.
Yeah,
yes.
Rachelle. when you would hide away in your room and read, and that was kind of my story too. I would also get in trouble for reading instead of doing whatever I was supposed to be doing. What kind of books were you reading, and were you fascinated by? And who were some of your favorite authors as a young person?
Yeah, I read everything by C.S. Lewis that I could get my hands on, because I just, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, that entire series, the Narnia series. The Magician's Nephew is one of my favorite books of all time.
Is it?
I've read it several times. I also think The Silver Chair is amazing. So I was really captivated by this kind of fantastical world of escapism, but that was so allegorical as well. I thought that was... I really loved that. And then because I was a young teen girl, I just wanted to be Nancy Drew with everything. And I just wanted to date a Hardy Boy so bad. So I loved the Nancy Drew novels. I loved the Hardy Boys. And then later I got really into like Boxcar Children and then kind of transitioned into more young adults. And of course, I went through my Twilight stage, and I've read all of the like dystopian novels. I went through a vampire stage, of course. And but usually for me, it was about, the romance wasn't as important as the stakes and the fantasy. I was really into fantasy. I was really into dystopian, which kind of falls into that speculative. That's what they kind of call it now. Anything that took me to a place that wasn't reality. I didn't really get into a lot of the teen drama heartthrobs because that just was not who I was.
Right.
You're always looking for yourself in the protagonist and the antagonist. And so I definitely found myself drawn to kind of actually more of the stuff that I write now, which is not surprising.
No, that's not. I love it that it's Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, because I mean, you and I are generations apart, and yet that's who I read too.
Those books are so good.
Yeah, and my daughter, who's probably maybe about 10 years older than you, I would guess, is she had all the Boxcar Children's books. So some of those stories are just absolute classics that just go from generation to generation. So that's really, really cool. Well, show us. Like time just flies by so quickly, but we want to talk about your newest release, The Girl Behind the Red Robe.
Yeah.
Very interesting cover. Wow.
Yeah, thanks. It's kind of backwards, but Girl Behind the Red Robe. You've got this rope. That's the important part there. But we're very excited about it. We had a great time partnering with, Revell, who's an amazing publisher, and they took a chance on a pretty radical story, and we are excited. I shouldn't speak for Ted since he's not here, but I'm very excited. I know he is too, to see how people, enjoy the journey.
I've read the opening pages, so very intriguing. Can't wait to finish it. But I like the different things I've read about it. This is more or less a quote from press materials. But you talk about how fear holds us hostage, and this novel moves readers from the rules that imprison to freedom through grace.
Yeah,
and there's this community, and I should just actually let you talk about the community that is living behind this robe.
Yeah, so the story kind of all came from a conversation over coffee with my husband, where he said something that I just couldn't shake, which was, what if our fears could devour us? What if they were like monsters, gargoyles that kind of stalk us? Yeah. And I knew almost immediately, I want to write a monster novel. That was kind of where this came from, but not quote unquote monsters per se. What if we could actually give fear faces? This idea of our fears taking form. What if because fear can devour you. It can destroy your entire life. And what if we gave it physical form? And that's kind of very early on where this idea came from. And then through talking about it over and over with my dad, originally I was going to write it by myself. I was having a hard time finding a publisher who would really believe in it, because it was kind of really radical, and it was a little bit too scary, a little bit too edgy, a very typical Ted Dekker story. He, through just talking it through with him and trying to find a way to fit it into boxes that were acceptable but still be authentic to it, he kind of was like, this sounds like a story I would write. What if we wrote it together? What if we took it, on the challenge of it, because it is pretty massive, together? And I was like, no. And then a couple of weeks later, I kind of let it sit and resonate. I thought, you know what? If I'm going to do this story with anyone, he is the person I'd want to do it with. And decided, okay, let's give this a shot. And took it to Revell, and they were like, yes, we believe in this as well. So that's where the story kind of originated. Yeah, and it's about a community that believes if they keep themselves pure, if they follow the rules, the law that's set before them, and keep themselves kind of sequestered in the hills of Tennessee, then as, the rest of the world comes to an end, which is what they really believe, they will be kept pure and safe so that they can then inherit the earth, which is a really good picture, I think, of where a lot of people in church find themselves. Mm-hmm. This idea that if we just follow all the laws, all the dogma, if we just keep ourselves good enough now, by doing X, Y, and Z, then we'll inherit the kingdom. But what if the kingdom is here in this life within us, like Jesus talks about? And what if all of those laws and rules are just fear masquerading as the wisdom of the world? Right. So what if you strip all that away and, then what do you have left, and where do you find yourself? And where then is the place for the love of Christ that Jesus spoke so highly of? His entire message, Jesus's entire, message was about a love, that knows no fear, a love that has an opposite, agape love. And we're created from it. That is, the love is our inheritance, not what's to come in the life, after this life, after this physical experience. What about experiencing that love now? And how does that then change your entire life? So that's really what this book is about. It follows a young woman named Grace as she struggles with coming face to face with the knowledge, through this crazy experience that maybe all that she's been afraid of, doesn't actually exist if she aligns herself with love. It's pretty trippy, but it's good. And I think people are responding to it because they see themselves in Grace. We really wanted to create a character that everybody could kind of see themselves as. And it's a little bit disturbing. I should say a lot disturbing when you think, oh my gosh, what if I'm a slave? What if everything in my life is fear? What if I'm a slave to it and I didn't even realize it? Which I think is what reviewers are finding so far. So, hopefully they'll continue to discover that.
I really like it, because I had read that, what if the monsters can chase us? So I thought that really is intriguing. But you know what? As soon as you said the word gargoyles, that made it even more real to me, I guess, because monsters can be so faceless, and so like, what is a monster? It can be look like anything, but when you start thinking about the gargoyles and maybe naming your fears to a gargoyle, I don't know, it's just like, it was just like, as soon as you said that word, it was like, that it kind of did something. It was
awesome. Well, now you'll read the rest of the book differently.
Oh yeah, cool. Probably. I mean, that was really cool. And then another thing, of course we want, God's word. We have God's word, and there are these, like, be kind to one another and all, all these things. But Grace's community has added a lot of other rules, so they become pharisaical. And I think that's what we see in a lot of those kinds of communities and cults. It's not just that they want to be pure for God, but they're just adding all these rules that are not in Scripture. And
absolutely. Yeah, my dad says often, which I think is good, is those rules are the wisdom of the world, and the wisdom of the world puts us to sleep at night. It tucks us in. It tells us we're safe as long as we do this, as long as we're this way, as long as we're healthy and we raise good children and we have good marriages and we don't get cancer. I mean, like, all of these things, like, as long as we do all these things, then, we're safe. You're safe. You're safe. You're safe. Protect, protect, protect. But, if the love of Christ is our inheritance, and that love, doesn't understand fear, it doesn't know fear, it has no opposite, then what are we really protecting ourselves from? And I think it opens up for a lot of, deeper conversations. If your marriage fails, if your kids, do things that you don't think are good, if your body is attacked, if, you wrestle with all of these, the self-doubt, these insecurities that you're not supposed to have, then are you now, not worthy of the love of Christ? I mean, so I just think there's so much here that people can interpret. I think it's a book about identity as much as it is anything else. Like, if Christ says you are the light of the world, And light is just another word for love. So you are the love of the world, the same love that I have, agape love, unconditional, meaning without condition.
Right.
That's really radical. What does that mean? And it poses some interesting debates for sure, but it was super fun to write. It was great to write with my dad. And I think it's a journey both of us are on, that we're all on, that, doesn't really have an end. It's kind of the ever rotating question of who am I really, and where does my hope really lie? And what am I putting my hope in? You can't serve two masters. So you can't be in both love and afraid for your marriage.
Yeah. And even at a very, low level, like we face fears every day, and you kind of get rid of one and there's another one just
it's
there, ready to attack. So it is an ongoing journey. And wow, the time has gone so quickly, and
I know.
I know, it has been so fascinating to talk to you. Show us your book one more time. It has just recently come out, just within the last week or so. The Girl Behind the Red Rope, Rachelle Dekker, who is a Christy Award winner in her own right with her, was it your first novel?
It was, yeah.
The Choosing.
Yep.
So it's The Seer. That's hard for me to say.
It's hard for a lot of people to say. The Seer series. Yeah. Had I known it was going to be such a tongue twister, I probably would have tried something different.
So, you might want to grab copies of those as well. So there's 3 books in those series. And then you have another standalone novel too. Wind
Through Deep Waters. Yep. Yeah. And that's more, so the Seer series is is dystopian, so kind of set like in a futuristic, anti-apocalyptic world. And then Wind Through Deep Waters is more contemporary psychological drama. So that one's really near and dear to my heart. I love that one as well. So if that's your jam, then if you like the Girl Behind the Red Rope, I bet you like Wind Through Deep Waters as well. And actually all of them. They're all great.
Of course, all of them. They are all great. I'm sure. Well, thank you so much. I have one last question I ask everybody that appears on Novelists Unwind. When you're all done with the novel, that manuscript, you type the end, what do you do to unwind?
Oh, what do I do to unwind? Usually I puzzle. That's really random. But I love to do puzzles. That makes me sound like a grandmother. A good glass of wine and a puzzle while I'm watching like some TV that requires 0 brain cells to really connect with, like America's Got Talent or the Great British Bake Off or Baking Show. That one that's on Netflix where they make these amazing things that I can't even show. Something like that. But I really like to just kind of escape and do something just for me. I also really like to spend time with my husband and son. Maybe go to Costco. We really love Costco. They have really good pizza, really good hot dogs, and great savings. So, just really normal stuff.
That's terrific. Rachelle, thank you again so much for being my guest. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And everybody, thank you for watching. We really appreciate you. Bye-bye.